time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hi, thanks for joining me this Tuesday, January 7th. Jimmy Carter's body has arrived in Washington and is currently en route to the Navy Memorial, where he will be eulogized by President Joe Biden, by Vice President Kamala Harris. We are going to keep an eye on the procession and the speeches. And if at all possible, we are going to try to bring some of that to you live as it happens. A lot of talk, as you might imagine, about President Carter. This Thursday is going to be a federal holiday. It is an official day of mourning declared by President Biden for President Carter. People talking about how Jimmy Carter was an outsider, kind of a little bit like Barack Obama. I know Barack Obama was a senator and not a governor, but Barack Obama was pretty new to Washington. Jimmy Carter, governor of Georgia, was also very new to Washington, but that outsider status gave him an interesting perspective. On CNN this morning, they were talking about how he was very, shall we say, what's the good word? We'll say he was very frugal. And so when he came to Washington, he wanted people to stop taking limousines, and he cut the staff at the White House by a third. He felt that sort of, ostentation and indulgence was unnecessary. He was very much a good human being. You might argue he was too much of a good human being for the rough and tumble of political life in Washington, though he had a backbone. There is no doubt about it. When push came to shove, I mean, the Middle East peace accords that he shepherded almost fell apart. They were in danger of falling apart, and it was his personal strategy, his approach, his will that kept that peace process together. Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock was on MSNBC last night with Jen Psaki and talked about just who Jimmy Carter was. They were both fellow Georgians. Who Jimmy Carter was, not just as a Georgian, but as a really moral, good man. Listen to Raphael Warnock.
What an extraordinary human being. I mean, he occupied the Oval Office, but let's just stop there. Jimmy Carter was an extraordinary human being and a humanitarian. He was a patriot in the best sense of the word, and someone who demonstrates, I think, as good as anyone I can think of in modern times, what it means to make your faith come alive in public service. And he did that while in office, and he did it when he left office because he understood that leadership is not about an office, it's about an orientation. And he never lost the depth of that commitment, and he kept finding ways to get in what another great Georgia Congressman, John Lewis, called good trouble all over the world.
Did he give you any advice on he was a deeply religious man, you're a deeply religious man, as you were thinking about how to navigate that yourself?
Well, I think it's an important question, particularly in this moment. where, even as a Christian pastor, sadly, I have to admit that too often the voice of faith in America today, the loudest voices, are mean-spirited voices, divisive voices, often harboring, it seems to me, a politics of resentment against the very people for whom Jesus said, I came to preach good news, the poor. Jesus centered the poor, so did Jimmy Carter, the world's most famous Sunday school teacher, because he actually read the scripture. He was a Matthew 25 Christian, as am I. And he demonstrates that you can be clear about your own particular faith identity without being oppressive towards folks who have other faith traditions or who come from no particular faith tradition at all. That is the covenant we have with one another as an American people. And Jimmy Carter embodied it so very well. And he was a great missionary, if you will, for the best of the American spirit as he fought for democracies all across the world, worked to eradicate diseases almost single-handedly.
Jimmy Carter's body on the way to the Navy Memorial. There will be a state funeral for him today, and we will try to bring you some of what President Biden has to say, Kamala Harris has to say, as it happens. We will try to keep an eye on that and make sure that happens. Like I said, right now, his body is in transit after having been flown into Washington, D.C., landed roughly about 1:30, and is now en route to the Navy Memorial. Remember, Jimmy Carter was in the Navy. He served aboard a nuclear sub quite heroically. He may have been a peanut farmer, but he was a very, very smart man. Nuclear subs, that kind of a posting, you have to be the best and the brightest to get that kind of a job. I wish we could spend the whole first half of this show just talking about Jimmy Carter and his legacy and the things he accomplished. But even though he is not yet sworn in as president, the chaos of Donald Trump is still intruding on our day-to-day lives. It's going to get worse. We have 660-some days till the midterm elections, and we have to find our calmness, our inner peace. We have to weather this storm that we are about to be in the middle of, and gather ammunition for the midterm elections. Usually I would say, by the way, the phone lines are open. We're going to keep the phone lines open until 3:30 today, just like on Friday. A lot going on. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Usually, it seemed to me that Donald Trump would bring his absurd ideas to the fore. I believe he's trying to distract. Not surprisingly, Aileen Cannon said, you know what? Yeah, you know what? We shouldn't release this Jack Smith report. It just, there's the argument is that it'll affect the cases of the other defendants and stuff. So, maybe we should just, we should just sit on it. Now, does that mean that's the end of it? No. If, as she has been repeatedly in the past, if she is reversed by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, there will be a small window where the report can be released before Trump's new Department of Justice takes over, because once Trump's new DOJ takes over, that report is going to disappear. My guess is that they will purge it from the computer system and shred the only paper copies they've got. Donald Trump does not want that Jack Smith report released. I don't know what he has to fear at this point. So, how is he distracting us from what's going on? So we're not talking about Jack Smith, the report. We need to see the report. Let's get the report. He's talking about, oh, dear God, am I going to do this for 2 years? He's talking about making Greenland and Panama part of the United States. He wants the Gulf of Mexico to be renamed the Gulf of America. He has, as part of his effort to blow these things up and distract, he's not ruling out military action. Yep, we're going to potentially invade Greenland and invade Panama. Yeah, don't worry about grocery prices. He's not going to bring those down. He already said that was going to be too hard. So if you're thinking that the cost of eggs is going to be more reasonable any day now, I got a bridge. I got a couple of bridges I can sell you. Yes, Greenland and Panama. Yep. Greenland is part of the Danish Commonwealth, in case you're wondering. And last month, just this December, Denmark's king had the coat of arms redesigned, making the polar bear, which represents Greenland, and the ram, which represents the Faroe Islands, much, much bigger and much more prominent. Hey, world, in case everybody's forgotten, that's part of the Danish Commonwealth. Okay? I don't care if you send one of your idiot sons to visit Greenland so that the cameras follow him around. I think this is, Trump may not be book smart and he may not read, but he's smart like a mobster smart. He's street smart. He can sense somebody's weakness. He knows how, especially with the media, he knows how to distract the media. What's a more interesting story? What could potentially be in the Jack Smith report, and how Merrick Garland promised us a while ago that at least parts of it would be released to the public? Should we be focusing on that? Or, oh my gosh, he wants to invade Greenland? In the first administration, he wasn't going to invade Greenland. He was just going to buy it. I don't know what he felt it would cost. But yeah, at the time, Danish officials said that idea was absurd. I'm sure the idea of a military involvement doesn't make them any happier. I don't know. I think if I were the Danish king, in addition to making sure everybody understood that Greenland was part of the Danish Commonwealth, close the borders. Turn that plane with Don Jr. around, make it go back. I'm sorry, the borders are temporarily closed. I know. When you're looking out for your country and or your company, you might decide that the smartest course of action is not to challenge Donald Trump face to face, not to do anything to embarrass him. I don't know. If you're the leader of a country, you have to do what's best for your country. Redesigning the coat of arms has gotten a lot of attention. I hope that the Danish king, I hope that the leadership in Panama decide at some point to stand up to Donald Trump. I really think that Justin Trudeau, he's resigned and from Prime Minister of Canada. I really think his capitulation, his cowering in the face of Donald Trump's threats. Yes, we have the power to hurt the Canadian economy, just as Canada has power to hurt our economy. Yeah, we could hurt each other. Yay. But the way Justin Trudeau slunk off to Mar-a-Lago, other members of the Trudeau government, not necessarily part of his faction, were like, the heck with Donald Trump. He wants to take us on, let him try. That is the response. If Justin Trudeau had reacted with firmness, had drawn a line in the sand, because that's what you have to do with bullies, I think Justin Trudeau would still be the prime minister. He would have rallied support around himself. But instead he capitulated. He was a coward. Coward. I'm looking at you, Jeff Bezos, who, by the way, you may have missed this. Amazon Productions, they're going to do a documentary about Melania, and she's going to be paid for that documentary. Jeff Bezos is going to pay her $40 million. $40 million. And yet they're still laying off people at the Washington Post. Let's go to the phone lines. Our good friend Jim from Chicago is on the line. Hey, Jim, how are you?
Hi, Joan. I was disappointed I didn't get an invite to the New Year's Eve party at Mar-a-Lago.
You didn't?
Yeah, I could have rubbed shoulders with Musk and some of the tech billionaires down there. But I was disappointed to hear that they didn't invite any homeless people from Florida to the party. But, of course, the Trump family were the only family I've ever heard of that had to go to charity school. Grown men had to go. The judge ordered them. Remember the charity they ran, the pony charity? He demanded they go to jail. Can you imagine grown men having to go? How embarrassed. You can't embarrass these people. You can't embarrass them, Joe.
You can't.
But
they literally are incapable of shame.
You know, they're beyond it. I mean, let's face it, the Billy Bush tape would have put anybody out of politics. But that didn't embarrass him. But the point is, Musk, with this immigration, he's absolutely interfering in every place on earth now with this immigration theory. Like Steve Bannon, that's why he gets the attention on the internet. Steve Miller, convincing, he caused a riot in England where he said that immigrants were strangling people and raping people, et cetera, et cetera. Pumping this immigration thing like as if those two were their parents were the captains on the Mayflower. And please believe me, the Mayflower was no bargain either, Joe. they were no bargain either. You know what I mean? But the point is, this immigration thing is just beyond belief. He's pushing this Italy. He's got, I think that screwball from Italy was at the party too. And what they're living on is immigration. They're convincing the people of that country that immigrants are coming in to kill us, to stab us, and rob our, steal everything. But the point is, what would America be without immigration? Think of it.
Yeah.
Who dug all the ditches?
Well,
Who dug all the ditches, Joe?
They did an interview right after Trump won the election, like in November, with a dairy farmer. And I'm trying to remember what state he was in. And he said, my farm operates 24/7. My farm cannot operate without immigrants. If Donald Trump really does not just want to deport immigrants who've committed crimes, but all immigrants. He said, he predicted, he said, in 3 days, the country will not have food. He said, I can tell you, my dairy farm would shut down immediately. Immediately.
What did the crazy Musk say? The commander of the internet. He said that you've got to let these skilled workers in because
the H-1B visas. He wants the immigrants that can work in tech. Yeah, that's why MAGA's mad at him. Because they were like, no, it's supposed to be everybody. We're supposed to now, all of us Americans, us white Christian Americans are now supposed to get those jobs, not your H-1B visa people. And Musk's going, ooh, I never wanted you before. I don't want you now.
But how many millions of followers? Who in God's name, Joan, to get up and follow that South African apartheid is family? I mean, think of the South Africa. Mm-hmm. That's the Boer War. That was the Boer War. It's the English and the Dutch, I think, were fighting over the resources of Africa. To South Africa. I mean, that's really. I mean, think about the way Africa's been robbed anyway over the centuries. The American Indian's been robbed. But the point is, who can follow this individual? I don't understand how people can be that vapid in their thought there. And I'm going to get up this thing and see what Musk is doing. Who cares what Musk is doing? That's what I say.
As long as the bromance lasts, we all have to care about what Musk is doing, because he really is. Somebody found this. He did an interview a long time ago where somebody asked him if he ever wanted to be, or, if he wanted to be president, and because he wasn't born in the United States, he couldn't be president. He was like, and he said, and he was like, yeah, I can't be president like directly. And the interviewer said, so like you could be like an indirect president? And Musk laughed and said, yeah, I could be an indirect president. That's my paraphrasing of the conversation.
Well, he'd like to be, if I ruled the world, the Tony Bennett song. He'd like to be able to, because apparently he's dipping his internet into everybody's business all over the world. Mm-hmm. And Ramaswamy, what is with Ramaswamy and what are those two idiots going to? Ramaswamy's an imbecile as far as I'm concerned. So is Musk. But the point is, what are they going to get together in a room and internet this into insanity here, or what? They're going to rule by internet. And we're going to get messages over here. Okay, here's what we're going to do now, and this is what we're going to do now.
When Donald Trump was in the White House, it was like you couldn't focus on anything because every outrage was superseded by a worse outrage. And he's not even going to be president for 2 more weeks. And I feel it's already begun. And that's not fair. I shouldn't have to deal with this yet.
Didn't the guy running Jeff Bezos, I guess, that other bald-headed nut, isn't he going to do a thing about Trump's wife some kind of a streaming
the $40 million Melania documentary.
Oh, you mentioned that. Mm-hmm. How crazy is that?
Mm-hmm.
She's about
Bezos, and Bezos wouldn't let them endorse Kamala Harris, even though they had it ready to go. His editor killed a cartoon that the political cartoonist wanted to run that showed him and other billionaires offering Trump money, and she quit and made that a viral story that went around the world. And now Bezos is paying Melania $40 million for a documentary. I mean, it's so obvious that he's trying to buy his influence, though I think he'll never equal Musk's influence with Trump. Anyway, Jim, we got to get to a break.
I know you do. I know. Okay, Joe, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the
Jim.
call.
Thanks.
And I'm going to read, when we come back, I'm going to read some of the texts, and we have more to talk about and more calls right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Our caller, Jim, was just talking about the outsized influence that Elon Musk, at least so far, still seems to be wielding on Donald Trump and his administration. One of my really, really, really favorite people is beginning to be Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, who's the Democrat from Connecticut. You know how we talk a lot about why don't Democrats just speak plainly and say what they mean and fight fire with fire? Chris Murphy is turning out to be that guy. He did an interview with Chris Hayes last Friday night, and he said what a lot of us have been thinking. He was talking about the Dems, and I'll share that with you in a little bit, but what got me thinking about this interview was Jim talking about Elon Musk, because Chris Murphy, when he was on with Chris Hayes, talked about Elon Musk, referred to Mr. Musk as the co-president. And I think that if we want to eliminate Elon Musk's influence from the government, we have to really focus on the fact that he's the one oftentimes who seems to be in charge. Even Donald Trump came out a while ago and said, Elon Musk is great, I love him, but he really needs to stay in his lane. Yeah, we need more of that. Anyway, I want to share with you Democratic Senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, on MSNBC Friday with Chris Hayes, talking about Elon Musk. Listen to this.
This isn't spin, right? It is just true that Musk is the co-president. That's maybe a charitable interpretation. He may be more powerful than Donald Trump. But the fact of the matter is Musk is trying to get close to the White House because he makes his billions off of government policy. He makes tons of money off of production in China. So he wants to manage the relationship in China so that he can continue to make lots of money. And the car subsidies and the rocket subsidies that come through the federal government are a big deal to him as well. So he is a perfect example of a number of oligarchs, of billionaires, of corporate titans who are surrounding Trump in order to steal from ordinary Americans, right? Cut our benefits, our kids' education, our grandparents' health care in order to turn a billionaire into a multi-billionaire. And Musk is well known, but he stands there as a perfect example for the American public as to what is fundamentally wrong with the Trump administration, how it is going to be an oligarchy, a kleptocracy, call it what you will, but it's just in service of the billionaire class.
Co-president Elon Musk. I agree. I'm going to share some of the texts with you. Got a text. Some people are worried that Donald Trump's rumblings about Greenland and Panama and forcibly taking them over, that somehow that could lead us into a wider war. I think you're giving the guy too much credit. Again, in the past, Donald Trump has ramped up the absurdity of what he says when he wants to distract us. And I think we've got to remember that. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Clearwater, Florida. Rick is on the line. Hello, Rick. Thanks for the call today.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Hello, Chicago. I miss you. I love you. Okay, I think you that last sentence you said, you really hit it on the mark. Donald Trump, we're giving him too much credit, and he's just distracting us. Now, I do agree that the things that you're commenting on are important, but I think we missed the mark, and I would love to hear you talk more about the true cockroaches that gave us Donald Trump. It's the Electoral College, and it's these corporations. I would love to hear one interview with somebody on the Electoral College. And I would love to ask him, what the hell were you thinking? Were you not around when we impeached this guy twice?
Yeah, the only problem, I am Rick, I am no fan of the Electoral College. I can't believe that we still have it as part of our system. But the sad truth is Donald Trump also won the popular vote, something he did not do previously. He won the popular vote. By some estimates, there were 70 or 80 million registered Democrat voters who stayed home and didn't vote in this election. So as much as I hate the Electoral College, I think that there's a lot of voters whose feet we have to hold to the fire here.
Well, let me say this then. When Hillary Clinton won the vote, the Electoral College stepped in and gave us Trump thinking they knew better. They obviously, I think if we can have a Supreme Court that is as corrupt as it is, I wouldn't be surprised if these Electoral College people are on the take as well. I mean, there's no way in your right mind you would put this person back into college. And I would like to – do you actually – I have yet to hear anybody say that Donald Trump won the popular vote. That's news to me.
Yeah,
I would think that
he got more votes than Kamala Harris. So he won both. And you know the way the Electoral College is set up, it was designed because the smaller states like Wyoming, they don't have much of a population. And the states like that are afraid that their votes won't count. There's so many people in New York and there's so many people in California that the fear they have and why there isn't widespread support for getting rid of the Electoral College is that a little state like Wyoming, it'll just be overrun because they don't have as many people. That's why some smaller states with less population want to keep the Electoral College because they feel. And they're right. It gives them an outsized influence. It's basically minority rule, but they don't care about that as long as they're in the minority.
Let me rebut that. Where was I going to go with this? As far as this Electoral College, we see what Donald Trump was all about, and they are set in place not just because of that, but also as a stopgap in case somebody comes to power and they're supposed to be a little more level-headed, and obviously they're not. And also, you're not addressing the fact of, I think that they're corrupt as can be. They seem to be just as corrupt, if not more. They're sticking out like a sore thumb. None of them are talking. Who are these people? Where do they come from?
There is no body of people who are the Electoral College. That's what we call this system, whereby if your state, every state gets a certain number of votes. There is no august body that says, oh, we're going to give Wyoming to Donald Trump. It has to do with the population, and a lot of states are winner take all. So if Donald Trump beats Kamala Harris by 10 votes, he gets all those electoral votes. It's not it's not like the Supreme Court. It's not like a body that looks over things and decides what to do. It's a system. It is calling it a college is kind of a misnomer. But you know what? You make a good point, Rick. I would love to get an expert on and talk about the history, how we got this crazy system. Wouldn't that be great? We could all learn a little bit.
Please.
I will do my best to find such a person.
They're out in the elixir. Who are these people? I mean, they're idiots. They're obviously idiots. Thank you.
Thank you for the call, Rick. I appreciate it. Let's go to our good friend Bobby, who is in Indiana. Hey, Bobby, while I was taking my news break, Ray heard you talking to Patty Vasquez, and you were worried that at the end of my vacation, I wouldn't come back. And I just want you to know that you don't have to worry. Someday I may not come back, but not right now.
Well, I heard you. I did talk to Patty, but I don't recall saying that. But I don't recall saying anything I ever say, so. But I'm just glad you weren't sick over your vacation and all of that.
Thank God.
I do remember the other day you said something about everybody having, quote, unquote, a word. coming into this. I do have one.
What's your word?
I came up with right after I got up Wednesday morning when all the good news came out after the election. Well, I won't go into it in any detail, but I'll tell you this much. And I think it concerns probably most of the people on this planet now. And the word, it begins with an F and it ends with a D, and you can figure out the rest yourself. And that's what I think, more or less to some degree, that we are for the indefinite period. I don't see, like I've told you before, us ever going back to what we were. I'm watching a situation now, and I'm going to report to you on it as it develops.
All right.
For some years now, I've been watching this Fruit Loop on my route to town. And he's always got a little U.S. flag hanging out over the county road, and he's got a big one on a pole in his yard, and always right below the good old red, white, and blue, he has traditionally had some kind of gun nut flag or one of these Tea Party, that type of thing. And he's had the F. Biden flag, and then the latest one was the Trump 2024 flag. And then just a couple of days ago, when I went into town, I said, hey, what's going on? There ain't flag one flying.
What was going on?
I don't know. So I'm watching. So the next thing I see go up, I'll let you know. But I've never seen him. I've never seen him flagless. You know what I mean? He's always had a crazy out there, and along with the U.S. So I want to see what this boy is up to, because he's crazy. He's crazier than I am. But
crazier than the both of us.
Yeah, I guess. But I don't know. It's like good old Tommy Hartman was saying today, with this stuff with the Greenland and Canada and God knows wherever, moon. Trump is pointing our attention. Look over here, here. While he's got his hand in our pocket over there.
Yes, exactly. He's very good at misdirection.
So while he's doing it, kind of be looking around the room elsewhere, because he's up to something elsewhere. Really
zip up your pockets. Hold your purse close to your body.
He don't want you to know the real story of what he's doing. So, because when you stop and think about it, I mean, the practicality of doing these things, that alone, just wouldn't fly. So, I don't put too much stock in that.
Well, I want you to keep an eye on those neighbors of yours, because they might be an interesting barometer if they decide that the guy they voted into the White House isn't doing the things that they hoped he would do, isn't keeping the promises he made.
That is one of the things, and leave it to you. This is something I've been thinking. I said, these yokels, and you know how hot-headed they are. And they think they've really, got the pig in the poke with this guy now in the White House, on everybody. But he's already said, well, can't do anything about the prices of groceries, and things like that. Then some of them are going to start, hey, what did we do to ourselves,
Yeah.
some of them are going to start thinking.
Well, I hope that is exactly what happens. That's why, some Democrats have said, maybe rather than doing everything we can to rein in Donald Trump, maybe we should let him do some of the things he's talking about. Let people see who they voted for. Let them live with the consequences of their choice.
They got this other idea, which I like maybe even better, so that the Democrats, can get something out of it, and we, the small folk, that make him eat some of his promises.
Well, Bernie Sanders already has said that he is going to write up legislation that would cap credit card interest rates at 10%, because Donald Trump promised on the campaign trail that he would bring those interest rates down. So I say Democrats should be doing that right and left. Donald Trump made a lot of promises. Let's see if he's going to fulfill them.
Put them on paper, the driest paper you can get. Don't give him a glass of water and say, "Here, swallow, son." Yes. Yeah.
Bobby, I got to go. I got to get to a commercial, but I thank you for the call, and I thank you for the concern that you don't remember talking about, but I appreciated it anyway. Thank you so much. We are going to take a real quick break and be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are opening up the phone lines and the text lines for the first half of the show today. I don't know that we are going to get a chance to bring you any of the funeral speeches given by President Biden and Kamala Harris live. It looks like that's going to be probably at least another hour before that happens. Jimmy Carter's casket was flown into Washington. There was a motorcade that brought it to the Navy Memorial. It is currently at the Navy Memorial, where it has just been transferred, and there will be another procession to the Capitol. We are waiting for that procession to begin any time now. Both President Biden and Kamala Harris are slated to speak at the service. I was well, you know what? Let's go back to the phone lines. I don't want people to be hanging on the phone lines when we take a break for news. But remember, even after we come back from the news, I'm going to keep the phone lines open until 3:30 today. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. And Bobby referenced a discussion I had yesterday with finding the word that is going to be your guide, your touchstone for 2025. Mine is abide. Abide, to endure, to sustain, to persevere. One of the texters said they had three words: staying actively aware, which is another good description. Let's go to the phones. Dave from Hoffman Estates is on the line. Hey, Dave. How are you? Is he there?
Hey, Joan.
Hey,
yeah,
Dave.
I'm here now. Okay.
Yes, I think we caught Paul Shivari taking a power nap.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear the beep.
Okay,
first,
he was distracted. He was distracted. All right, he's forgiven.
Yeah, no, Paulie's good. On that, I was mentioning about that guy that I call him a demon, the one that lit that woman up on that subway.
Oh.
And it's funny. They mentioned that the man was in here illegally. They hadn't mentioned, though, when he got over here, it was in 2018. Guess who was at the helm then?
Yes, who was at the helm then?
Yeah,
yes, indeedy.
He would have been sitting there screeching, holy hell, if it would have been, during Biden's watch. But
and a lot of the recent domestic terrorist attacks that we've had in this country haven't been by illegal immigrants. They have been by generally white, male, Donald Trump supporters, MAGAs.
And I heard, I don't know if it was Lawrence O'Donnell or whether they said that the vast majority are former military.
Well, the guy who he rented a cyber truck and drove it to Trump Tower apparently shot himself and also set off a car full of explosives. He was active military.
Correct. He was on leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I told you yesterday or not, that good best friend of mine, his son was he's a retired Marine, and they were going to go on to the base to go to the commissary or the BX or whatever, and they turned around because if you didn't have any kind of proper identification, if you were a civilian, a dependent or a civilian, you were not allowed on that base. And I guess there was quite a line of cars. They've been turning them back. But when you mentioned about Musk that time in that one interview, I'm surprised he doesn't want to be called President Pro Temp by now already.
Yeah, he's got a lot of Trump's worst qualities, but he is smart enough to know that if this whole co-president idea gets out of hand, that he is going to not have the influence. Now, he's never going to be without influence because we are, like, for instance, he's got all those Starlink satellites. And, we have been privatizing so much of what we do. We've been privatizing a lot of what goes on at NASA. We've been privatizing some of this other stuff. We are dependent on those satellites. As a matter of fact, I just read yesterday, United Airlines is going to cut a deal with Starlink to use their satellites so that they can have Wi-Fi in all of their planes.
Yeah,
so that the Wi-Fi would, but he's already shown as a friend of Putin, he's willing to mess with Ukraine and mess with Taiwan and their connectivity. It's because he's very dependent on China. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, too, like with Trump and Musk and then the rest of the acolytes, they're almost like wolves, and there can only be one alpha male. Eventually it's going to come to a head. And
I think so.
Money equals power, and Musk got the money, and So,
Trump's going to be careful because he definitely wants that pipeline, especially that pipeline to all that cash. But they're both very egotistical. They are both narcissists, and if Trump starts to feel that Elon Musk has more power than he does, he's going to react not like a president. He's going to react like a mob boss. He's going to find a way to cut Elon Musk off at the knees.
Yeah, and like you said, where Trump always throws like these diversions and that. Well, that's how wolves hunt. They got one bunch pushes the chattel, if you will, to the hunters. Then so. You think they want to go after Panama and Greenland? He's saying with the troops and stuff like that. You think he wants to? Then he'll try to get it by force and then say that they have to give it up in reparations.
I don't think Donald Trump is very bright, but I think he inherently has a gut instinct for the media and how to do something so big and so absurd that everybody, he's like a magician. Look over here. Don't look at my right hand. Don't look to see what my left hand is doing. Look over here. I think he's an absolute master of that. And I think that it's absurd, this idea that he would invade Greenland or invade Panama. It is utterly absurd.
And
even he knows that.
If this perv Hegseth got in, how soon would it be before Trump and Hegseth would enact a draft? Wouldn't that be ironic? But let me close out with this one. I read the other day, and this is last week there, that President Biden sent the $2.5 billion more in the weapons to Ukraine. And that in the administration, they're working quickly to spend all what's left of the money it has available to help Kiev fight off Russia before Trump takes office.
Well, but didn't you hear, Dave? He's going to end the Ukraine conflict on day one. And it was reported. I didn't see this while I was on the air, but it has been reported that Trump has actually been making overtures to Putin. You know, like, would you end the war if this happened or that happened? And the reporting was that so far, everything Trump has floated, Putin has said, no way. Nope. Nope. Not going to do it. So, and this just came to light because, he's trying to do this under the radar, trying to find something that will resonate with Putin. So because he says, day one, Dave, this is going to be over.
Yeah, it'll be it'll end up being like what happened to Finland after Russia attacked them. They had to surrender about 10% of the eastern portion of the country, Karelia at that time. So, and then Janet Yellen has also provided $3.4 billion in economic assistance to Ukraine to help pay their critical government services, money to pay salaries for civil care workers and first responders, health responders, and when all is said and done, now since that war started in February 2022, we've provided more than $65 billion.
Well, they better do what they can when they still have the power. That's what I've been reading, is that the White House has been scrambling to try to make it more difficult for him to disrupt national parks and national lands, make it more difficult, putting up all these roadblocks. Trump even complained about it at one point. He was like, he's trying to make everything harder for me to enact my agenda.
Yeah,
well, I hope so.
I heard he's going to undo on day one what President Biden just did for the drilling, that one area.
Probably.
Anyway, let me get asked for somebody else.
All right, we got to get to the news.
Thanks, Joan.
Thanks,
right,
Dave.
Joan.
We are going to be right back with more calls, more texts, and more really interesting comments from famous people right after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Jimmy Carter's casket is now part of a funeral procession to the U.S. Capitol. His body was flown to Washington about 1:30 this afternoon and was then taken in a motorcade to the Navy Memorial. And now there is a funeral procession to the U.S. Capitol. The route they are taking mirrors the route that Jimmy Carter took on Inauguration Day. Jimmy Carter, of course, was ill for quite a while, knew that this day was coming, and much of what we are going to see and what we are going to hear was planned by him. He and Rosalynn, who, of course, preceded him in death, talked about this and planned this. Most of the music that has been played so far, they're all songs that he picked out that either resonate with his history or his faith. So we are seeing the Jimmy Carter funeral as a Jimmy Carter production. His body is going to be taken to the U.S. Capitol, where it will lie in state. We will also hear funeral speeches later, much later this afternoon, from President Biden, Vice President Harris. This Thursday, the 9th, has been declared a national day of mourning. It is... It will be a federal holiday. We will, of course, be here on WCPT, but you probably won't be able to go to the bank. And I don't know if other government and government-ish buildings will be open or closed. You might want to check if you are planning to pick up a book at your local library. You might want to get it done before Thursday. I don't know if those hours will be affected, but it has been declared a national day of mourning for us. We have been talking about Jimmy Carter, and we have been talking about the chaos already being brought into our midst by a man who isn't even going to be president for 2 more weeks, Donald Trump. And we are taking your calls and reading your texts until 3:30 today. So let's go to St. Charles. Bonnie is on the line. Hey, Bonnie, thanks for the call today.
Oh, thank you, Joan. You're on fire. Thank you. You're saying all the things that we're thinking, and we don't have a forum to say them. Can you start a heroes and zeros list? And at the top of the heroes would be Chris Murphy, and at the top of the zeros would be Melania Trump.
I like that idea. You know, Joy Reid on MSNBC does a thing every Friday that she calls Who Won the Week? And she focuses on somebody who won the week with what they said or what they did. I like heroes and zeros, too.
Well, I think Trump is just trying to steal the attention from our wonderful President Jimmy Carter. He just has to throw a 2-year-old tantrum so he can get attention from Jimmy.
Yeah. And he was trying. He has said that he does plan to attend the funeral. And apparently, if he attends, it's been reported all 5 living presidents, former presidents, will be attending the funeral as well. But he did say today that while he admired Jimmy Carter as a man, he didn't really think that his legacy was anything to brag about, the things he accomplished.
Oh, baloney.
Yeah, I know.
That's nonsense.
That's Trump.
Don't ever
synonym for nonsense.
We need you, Joan. We need you every day. We really do, because we're going crazy with this monster.
Yeah. And I think, Bonnie, the craziness has only begun. You know, there may be, I should probably warn everybody listening, for the next couple of years, you may, while I'm on the air, hear a thumping sound. I promise you that will be me hitting my head on my desk. The microphone is low enough that I can still talk while I hit my head against the desk. But I have a little space cleared out, and I'm planning that's where I'm going to do that.
Well, I have a brand new great-granddaughter, and she's going to have to grow up in that jackass's world, Trump's world. It makes me sick.
Well, by the time she's old enough to pay attention, let's hope he's completely gone and we are starting to bury his legacy.
Yes, thank you, yes.
And recapture the country we were before all of this insanity started.
Absolutely.
Bonnie, thank you so much for the call. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up?
No, just keep going, keep fighting, keep us energized and focused.
I will do my best. I will try to keep the head thumping to a minimum, Bonnie. I'll do what I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for the call. Okay. Let's go to Myrna, who is on the line from Chicago. Hi, Myrna. Thanks for calling in today.
Hi, Joan. Thank you for being back in the studio. We missed you like crazy. I'm sorry, but you are no longer allowed to take any time off.
Okay.
Let's take a microphone with you, okay?
All righty. Well, I am. I told, matter of fact, Paul Shivari should probably know this. I told them that I would work. You know, there's Martin Luther King Day is the 20th. It's a Monday. It's a holiday. But, Paul, I'm going to be doing my show. So it's going to be you and me, kid.
Let's rock and roll. I'm all about it.
Yeah. I will try. I may take a day off here and there to see my daughter or for my birthday, but other than that, Myrna, I'm going to be here.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Screaming into the microphone, screaming into the void.
In referring to the show, who is the gentleman that you had as a co-host? I believe he said he's a local college professor. He was on a Monday.
William Muck
Friday.
filled in. William Muck from North Central College in Naperville filled in a day or two for me while I was gone.
Could you please make sure that he's covering for you more often?
Sure.
He was incredible. I really enjoyed listening to him. I missed him on Monday. I caught him on that Friday that he hosted, and I regret not having heard him on Monday. He was just so pleasant, so informative. I mean, I want to say he's like the male version of you. That's how good he was.
Wow.
Seriously, I really, I listened to some of your co-hosts or guest hosts, and I turned off the radio because I couldn't get into it with them. The way they were handling the show, and this gentleman, I was just begging for more. I was like,
well,
hey, could you...
Myrna, while you and I were just talking, like I said, I'm going to be here Monday the 20th, but I'm going to that Friday. I'm taking off because it is my birthday weekend, and Ray and I are going to, I think we're going to go up to Kohler, Wisconsin, and kind of celebrate up there. But Andy Miles just texted me that William Muck will be filling in for me Friday, January 24th, Myrna. So
Yay!
Your wish is our command.
Thank you. I love it. I'll be listening to him definitely. But also, another thing, I don't know if you heard earlier about how Trump has threatened that hell's going to break loose if the hostages are not released before he becomes president. He's threatening like major issues. His ego is so huge; it's bigger than his butt. And
well, he's kind of echoing what Netanyahu has been saying. Netanyahu made the announcement, I don't know if it was over the weekend, it was recently, within the last week or so, that if basically if all the hostages were not released, he would make what's happened in Gaza so far look like an overture to a symphony, that he's basically threatened to level Gaza, to come in with more guns and more planes and more bombs and more missiles if the hostages are not released. And I don't know if he gave, I'm trying to remember if there was a specific date, but there was some sort of time frame involved. And it was like, we'll back off if the hostages are released, but if they're not released, we're going to come in guns blazing like you've never seen. So if Donald Trump said something to that effect, he's basically just sort of mimicking what Benjamin Netanyahu has already threatened.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like they're kind of playing off of each other. It's like, hey,
well, Trump already said, he thinks Benjamin Netanyahu is great, and whatever he wants to do, whether he wants to obliterate Gaza, whether he wants to annex the West Bank and make it an official part of Israel, whatever he wants to do is okay with Donald Trump. There will be no pushback of any kind.
Yeah, and the irony of him saying that today is that I believe it was yesterday or over the weekend, the leader from Honduras, who happens to be a female, said she wasn't going to take his crap. He could threaten all he wanted, but
I saw that. She said that if Donald Trump does mass deportations and tries to bring plane loads of Hondurans back to that country, that we have a military base in Honduras, and we don't pay the government any rent for it. We've had it for decades. And she said essentially that if there are mass deportations and Hondurans are returned to the country, that she plans to kick the United States out of that military base.
Yeah, and he wasn't expecting that. And it's the same thing with the president of Mexico. She already has set up or is working on having it set up by the day of inauguration, a system for any immigrant who is being deported or being held. They're setting up a program, an application for cell phones for anyone who is finding themselves in custody to be able to contact the consulate office in their area, the Mexican consulate or embassy, so that someone knows where they're at so that unlike the previous situation where people disappeared, nobody knew where they were at for weeks and weeks on weeks. This way, they can immediately contact somebody to let them know what's going on and where they're at, so that if they disappear, their family and the government will be able to try to locate them much easier than what happened before under Trump.
Oh. It's good that somebody's standing up to him,
Oh, yeah. And the thing that bugs him is that it's two women who are...
Yes, it is, isn't it? Isn't it just?
Yeah.
Isn't it just? And that's just so beautiful. Yeah, I saw an actual video of the statement from the Honduran president, and she is not going to put up with him. She is not. She is just not.
Yeah.
Oh, Myrna, thank you so much. Hey, I'm going to send a note to William Muck, and I'm going to let him know about the wonderful, kind words you have shared with us about him. It's always good. It's always good to hear that, some part of the audience really likes what you're doing. And thank you for that.
Okay.
Thanks,
all right,
Myrna.
Thank you, too. Okay, bye-bye.
We are going to take a break. We're going to come back with more texts, with more calls. I want to share one more Chris Murphy with you, at least that, if not more. We'll be right back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
We're keeping an eye on the procession of Jimmy Carter's coffin to the U.S. Capitol, where it will lie in state. His body arrived from Georgia today about 1:30 Chicago time. Was in a motorcade to the Navy Memorial, and now is in a funeral procession on the way to the U.S. Capitol. This follows the route that Jimmy Carter took when he came for Inauguration Day. Again, the funeral planned very carefully by Jimmy Carter himself. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Ron from Chicago is on the line. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. I did not hear much of anything about Trump's ideas about people wanting to come here legally, legal immigrants. Is he going to be selected by saying we only want people from certain countries coming here?
Well, he's already said that before, Ron. Remember he said he doesn't understand why we don't get a lot of immigrants from, Sweden and Finland. The subtext being very obvious. Why can't we get, well-educated white people, not these poor brown people who keep coming in?
Yeah, that's what I thought. And there was a story today that China, to avoid the tariffs, they're going to maybe start building their electronic vehicle facilities over here. So how is Trump going to stop that?
Ooh, that would be interesting. Yeah. That would be very interesting. And he says he's got a bunch of tariffs that he's going to impose by executive order the day he's inaugurated. So exactly who will be singled out is anybody's guess. But there were a lot of people saying that in December that they were moving up. If they had plans to buy a new car or buy new appliances, they were going to try to do it before January 20th because they're worried about the tariffs and the fact that all the stuff that we buy for our homes and our lives will be significantly more expensive going forward. And they're probably right.
Right. And one more thing, why don't we take over the island of Grenada? Those medical students need our help.
That's right. There's so many places we could take over. We should probably start a list. I think, how about every island in the Caribbean? We could take those. That would be nice. Have a nice beach to go to. Wouldn't need a passport.
Just one one-way trip and one-way boat ride. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for that. Before we go back to the phone lines, I want to share with you another clip from Chris Murphy when he was on MSNBC with Chris Hayes. You know, I like this idea of heroes and zeros. And I'm telling you, Chris Murphy, he's always been interesting, and he's always been a very clear-spoken person, but he is emerging as one of the Democrats who seems to be willing to speak truth to power and seems to be willing to go to the mat. And he wants, like right now, one of the things he said to Chris Hayes, he's a little bit frustrated with his fellow Democrats. You know, Donald Trump has nominated just miserable people for his cabinet, people who are unqualified to be human beings, forget about to being in government service. And Chris Murphy was a little frustrated that there hasn't been an organized pushback the way he would like to see. And he kind of outlined that for Chris Hayes. Listen to Chris Murphy.
I do see these nominations as winnable fights, but Democrats have to fight the fights. And frankly, Chris, I don't see that happening across the Capitol right now. I mean, I've been talking ad nauseum about how Kash Patel is being put into the FBI literally to destroy the rule of law, to enable Trump's dream to put his political opponents in jail. Why are we giving RFK Jr. a pass? Okay, he wants to ban pharmaceutical advertising. That's nice. He also wants to kill our kids by withdrawing vaccines from our schools and taking fluoride out of our drinking water. Yeah. I mean, Democrats have to fight these nominees, and not just like once a week, every day, because the only way that Republicans even consider voting against them is if the temperature has been turned up all across the country. And I just worry that we are not working the way we need to work against a nominee slate that is just absolutely bonkers and out of the American mainstream by a million miles.
Every day, Chris Murphy, every day, from the Democratic senator from Connecticut, every day we will be fighting the good fight right alongside you. Let's squeeze in one more phone call before we go to a break. Ed is on the line from Palos Park. Hey, Ed, thanks for your call today.
Hey, Joan, how are you? Thanks for taking my call. Everything that has gone on with Trump, and it's 2 weeks before he's formally inaugurated, I just can't get over what's going on. And just like you just played that clip with Chris Murphy there, and it's true. The Democrats have no leadership, no strong person to
rally around.
Yeah, to rally around and fight back. And, you know, they did the same thing in a campaign. All the rotten, horrible things and name-calling that Trump did in that campaign in lies, they should have been out there every day retaliating with strong speech to the point of just calling him a dirty human being, and he's lying again. People of the United States don't believe this person. You know,
when Barack Obama was elected president, the Republican leadership in Congress and in the Senate got together. They met, I can't remember if it was a restaurant or a hotel room. They got together and they planned out how they were going to oppose Barack Obama, what the game plan was going to be. Have you read or seen or heard anything about Democrats doing anything similar? Because I haven't, Ed.
Nothing close. Nothing close.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And, you know, now today I hear this Elaine Cannon is stopping the Mueller report, or not, excuse me, the Jack Smith report from being released. It's one radical thing every day. What are we going to do when he's in for 4 years? I told my wife, I says, I'll be in therapy to handle it. I mean, this has just gone on, and Democrats are just too nice. They do not believe in fighting fire with fire, and it's going to hurt us all.
I think somebody whether it's Chris Murphy, but I think somebody is going to emerge. We have a leadership vacuum right now. God knows President Biden checked out, and after her defeat, frankly, so did Kamala Harris. So we need somebody to step into the breach and somebody to rally around. And I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's a group of them. I just need somebody to be there. Oh, Ed, I've got to get to a break. Thank you so much for your call. I will be in therapy right with you, my friend. So
Thank you.
maybe we can start a therapeutic group. We are going to take a break. We are going to be back with the senior writer at Salon.com, Amanda Marcotte, after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We're having a little bit of a technical situation. We connected with Amanda Marcotte from Salon.com, and then we lost the connection. Paul is gonna work on that. He's gonna let me know when we have Amanda. And until then, something that I was going to save for tomorrow, I will share with you. You know, Adam Kinzinger is getting an awful lot of airtime these days. I see his face on CNN quite a bit, not just, via a Zoom link, but he's there in the studio. And recently, I think this was from Monday night, Andy said, Adam Kinzinger was on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. One of the things that Stephen Colbert asked him about was this idea that some Democrats are suggesting to Joe Biden that he write up preemptive pardons for people who were on the January 6th committee. Donald Trump has said that he is going to use his Justice Department as a weapon to come after his enemies, and he considers anybody who was on the January 6th committee to be an enemy. So that's why a lot of people, me included, have been saying that they hope that Joe Biden is writing up a bunch of pardons as he walks out the front door of the White House, because people should not be targeted for doing the right thing. I know. How naive is that? Anyway, Stephen Colbert asked Adam Kinzinger about this, and here's that exchange.
Bernie Sanders says that he thinks Biden should offer preemptive pardons to a host of different people, including the people in the January 6th committee. I know that you said on CNN that Anderson Cooper asked you, point blank, would you take a pardon if offered to you? And your answer was?
No.
Why?
No. Because I didn't do anything wrong. Okay. I mean, look, if Donald Trump wants to come after me, look, do I want him to come after me? Of course not. But if he decides to, I'll be twice as much of a pain in his backside, because I will, from my cell in jail, continue to remind the American people that this is not the country we live in. This was not the country that the Constitution represents, and I'll continue to call him out. So if that's what my next thing of service is doing it from a jail cell, okay.
Adam Kinzinger bringing the heat. I want to share with you some more of that conversation. Stephen Colbert talked to Adam Kinzinger about Republican leadership, which they both kind of came to the conclusion was really failed leadership. Listen to this.
What do you make of the fact that Donald Trump, 4 years later, after this horrific day, as you said, you say in that clip that he was a non-entity. Yeah. He was done. Generally speaking, historically, I was wrong about this too. Historically, strong man is strong until strong man ever not strong. Yeah. And then strong man weak. Yep. And that's what I thought would happen. But now strong man back.
Well, look, here's the thing. He was weak. And this is what the clip says. I mean, for 3 weeks, nobody in the House GOP would even admit basically they knew Donald Trump. And so in this vacuum where nobody was speaking, he was, look, him leaving Andrews with nobody there, goes to Mar-a-Lago, he's alone. And then Kevin McCarthy made a decision. And that decision was, I really want to be Speaker. If I take on Trumpism, I won't be able to be Speaker. If I embrace it, everybody else will come along. And I think this is a failure of leadership, of GOP leadership, because the base that trusts the GOP leaders look at them, and when the Republican leaders were like, "Oh, January 6th was nothing. It was a tourist visit." Eventually, they're going to be like, "Yeah, I guess I believe them versus these other people I don't trust." So there's a lot of responsibility that goes around to bear for this, not the least of which, of course, is Donald Trump himself.
You know, Adam Kinzinger has said previously that visit by Kevin McCarthy to Mar-a-Lago, he thinks that was an inflection point. He thinks that had Kevin McCarthy not done that the Republican Party would have been willing to turn their back on Donald Trump. He has said before that he thinks that was a really significant act, and it was perfectly craven. He's absolutely right. Kevin McCarthy wanted desperately, more so than I think we've seen naked ambition in Washington before, but nothing like the desperation Kevin McCarthy had to be Speaker of the House. And he put his own personal success, his own personal power, a la Mitch McConnell, except at least Mitch McConnell usually did it because he wanted to make the party more powerful. He didn't so much do it for personal power, but Kevin McCarthy, Adam Kinzinger has said before that was a turning point. If Kevin McCarthy had not gone down to Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's influence would have waned. Guess we'll never know. We have undone our technical difficulties. Amanda Marcotte, senior writer at Salon.com, is with us now. Amanda, how are you?
Good. I'm mad at my phone, but other than that, fine. Thank you.
Yeah, technology is wonderful when it works. And when it doesn't work, we realize how utterly dependent we have become. I can't tell you the arguments that I have with Siri. I mean, they are the most heated arguments I have with anybody in my life. Yeah. Yeah. I try not to fight with people in my life, but man, she brings out the worst in me. So I want to talk to you. You have been writing a lot, but not just about Trump and MAGA, but particularly about this sort of MAGA masculinity, this sort of toxic masculinity that goes with the MAGA mindset. Talk to the audience, if you would, about that.
Yeah, it's been a source of fascination for me for a while because I think that it's a really classic example of people of con artistry, and it's like men are told that they do have real problems, and what they're being sold, however, by the MAGA movement is literally just more of the same poison that often led to their problems to begin with, toxic masculinity, right? And it's like, this Las Vegas bomber, I think, is a really classic example of how these kind of messages about masculinity and what makes somebody a man that come from the MAGA movement and from conservatism generally actually just create the men's problems, right? Mm-hmm. This guy seemed like a bit of a lost soul. He obviously struggled. He seemed to struggle with PTSD and other problems, but he couldn't, friends of his said that he wouldn't get therapy because he was afraid that all the other, guys in the military would laugh at him and make fun of him and think he was emasculated. So instead of getting help and quitting the toxic, self-defeating behaviors, he doubled down until the next thing you know, he's renting a cyber truck and blowing himself up in Las Vegas and thinking that that's some kind of huge noble act in the name of MAGA. And it's like, well, no, you're just dead now, guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, who did you help? Like, not yourself, that's for sure. But we see this over and over and over again, and I really don't know how to pull out of it because, you know, whenever you point out to these guys that actually the answer to their problems is, you know, feminism, they act like you're trying to take their testicles away.
It's so sad. You know, many years ago, I had a friend who was very deeply depressed and was contemplating ending their life. And I urged them to get help. And I said, I remember saying to him, look, you're already ready to end your life. You know, what have you got to lose? You know, if it doesn't work, you can still end your life. But maybe, just maybe, it'll help. And he, you know, that was an argument that actually resonated with him, and he did end up trying to get some help. But, you know, it's like when you reach the point where you're really ready to end things, I don't understand why at that point you would no longer care that your military buddies might make fun of you. I mean, literally, what have you got to lose? It's really tragic.
It really is. And, you know, it was something that, like, I think I really struggled to understand fully until the COVID pandemic. And then it really kind of came into focus because so much of the anti-vaccination rhetoric was really about this toxic masculinity, like, I'm strong, I don't need no stupid vaccine. And then they died. And then they died, and then they died. But it was better in a lot of people's minds to die than to admit that you have a normal human immune system like everyone else, including women, you know? And obviously a lot of women were anti-vaxxers too, but I think there was like just this like, it became it's not just about gender, it's also about race, it's also about political ideology, it's all these other things, but it's like the self-destructiveness of the MAGA movement is a perennial source of fascination to me. Like, they are ready to die for this crap, and for no reason.
That's what I don't understand. I don't understand the extreme virulence of these beliefs. It can't be making them happy. You know, no. I don't think this is a good time. I don't think that they feel, you know, powerful and understood.
No, I mean, look at Trump's press conference today. Like, he won the presidential election, and all he sounded was just bitter, whiny, angry, furious, just the world's biggest victim. Wah, 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 wah. And you're like, this man is miserable.
Yes, because he is. Right after the election, obviously we are a very Democratic, liberal-leaning station. And on my text line, I didn't get too many trolls leading up to the election, but after the election, the vitriol, the anger, the viciousness that came through from MAGA texters. And I kept saying, I didn't read most of it on the air. I just alluded to the fact that it was coming in. And I was like, guys, you won. You won. This is when you're supposed to be happy. Because let me tell you, if Kamala had won, I would be very happy. I would be happy. I would be looking forward to things. And it was like they couldn't, it was like they had a love affair with the anger or whatever the anger made them feel, and they couldn't give it up.
Well, and also, like, what did they actually win? Like, they're so focused on owning the libs. And, you know, there really does feel like often with these folks, a dog who caught the car kind of thing happening, right? Like, it's like, oh, we must own the libs. We must own the libs. We have successfully owned the libs. Oh, crap. Now we have to have Donald Trump as president. Like, oh, God, you're owning the libs so hard, you just owned yourselves. Like, he's a terrible president, and he will be a terrible president for everybody. He's not going to give MAGA anything that they want. He might give them, higher prices. He might give them an HHS that falls apart. He might give them, it's a Pyrrhic victory for sure. And I think that I joked today on Blue Sky. I was like, I continue to sort of toggle back and forth between kind of hoping that the Democrats don't actually prevent all the terrible stuff he wants to do, so that like the people who voted for him actually face a consequence or two for their decisions and their behavior, and also like recognizing that there's no way to contain the consequences to them. Like, I'm going to suffer, good people will suffer. Like,
it's so interesting that you say that, because that was going to be the very next thing that I asked you to weigh in on, because, I am torn. There is a part of me that wants to just sit back and let Donald Trump do his worst. And this whole, I'm a good immigrant, he's not going to deport me because I'm a good immigrant. I just okay. Well, let's just see about that. I think that there is going to be such buyer's remorse, and there is a part of me that wants the Democrats to maybe let it happen. And I know that sounds terrible, and I think that it's not a good look for me to be saying these kinds of things, but gosh darn it. I want to look at some of these people in the eye and say, oh, I'm sorry, you're not happy, but this is what you voted for. Something awful is happening, and you're paying more than ever for a new car and new appliances and all, but this is the guy you voted for. He said this is what he was going to do. Did you not believe him? Did you think he was teasing you? I don't know. Does that make us bad people?
No, it doesn't make us bad people. I think it's actually rooted in a good impulse, which is like, I want to get on the other side of this so bad. And I do believe that we will get on the other side of this. I think eventually people will wake up. People eventually wake up to fascism. They do. And that's why fascist governments fall. But often they only do because they actually have to live with the consequences of it. And I think a lot of it is sort of just wanting to get on the other side of this, wanting it to stop being a threat and be a reality, so that, because they obviously aren't going to learn any other way. And saving people from themselves, is, they're adults. I totally get it. But it is frustrating. I will say, some Democrats clearly agree with you, because today they voted for that immigration bill, a lot of them, that would deport people for merely being charged with misdemeanor crimes, right? So like shoplifting, you shoplift, you're getting deported. And I don't know if that's going to pass. I mean, there's just so many hurdles, but Democrats voted for it, so I guess, some folks. But the thing is, what's frustrating is the people targeted by that are, by definition, not voters. And so whatever their personal opinion are, we're still not actually seeing consequences come to the people who did this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I guess, what I'd like to see is the people who actually voted for this guy. I would like there to be consequences for them. And I know one person in my life, there are probably others, but one person was upfront about the fact that they didn't say, I voted for Trump. They said, I voted Republican. I've been Republican my whole life. My family's always voted Republican, and so I voted Republican. And they were telling me, in the context of the fact that somebody else who works with them said some very bad things to them about how one of the nicest things they said was that they were a moron for voting the way they did. And, you know, when it comes to somebody like that, there's a part of me that says, you know, I'm not going to do anything to promote somebody who has such a different worldview than me. And then there's another part of me that says, but how are two such different sides ever going to come together if there isn't some sort of dialogue? If you can't, you know, maybe this person and I will never see eye to eye politically, but I think that they're a good person, and hopefully they think I'm a good person, and maybe that's a start. Where do you fall on that? Are there any out-and-out MAGAs in your life?
Oh, yeah, no, and I've cut them off because at the end of the day, I actually did a really big article at Salon about people who have cut off their MAGA parents. And at the end, you know, I think that it's a complicated issue. I recommend people read the article because it's never just about politics, you know. Mm-hmm. And like that even sounds like a weird phrase when we're sort of facing down an authoritarian threat. But like it really is the situation where the responsibility to build bridges is always on the left, right? Because we're assumed to be the people who care. We're the people who care about this country working. We're the people who care about other people. So they don't care, so they're assumed to have no interest in having that dialogue, so everything has to be led by us. But you can't have a conversation where only one person is willing to engage. One of the therapists I talked to said, you know, she tells her patients a relationship is like a dance, and if one partner isn't dancing, then you're really not dancing with them. Like, trying to talk to somebody about politics whose entire worldview is based on disinformation, who absorbs just tons of propaganda about how people like you are the demon and stuff. Like, what are you, like, where do you even begin? It's like trying to have a conversation in a language you don't even speak. They just don't accept the sort of basic terms of the conversation. And I don't know, like, when the left is being told this is our responsibility, but we have absolutely no tools in which to even accomplish the goal of engaging somebody who is like a blank, like they're just a wall, right? Mm-hmm. Like a wall of disinformation. They've completely ensconced themselves in lies, and nothing you say, I think, can really get through to somebody like that. And I resent it being my responsibility when I didn't do the bad things to begin with. I'm not the one who has to make amends here. Yeah. And I think sometimes, especially when you talk about cutting off MAGA parents, maybe I'm just speaking from my own family experience, but it isn't just, you know, MAGA ideas. I think for some, particularly of older folks, there's a lot of racism wrapped up in that. A lot of, I think that when Barack Obama got elected to the presidency, there were a lot of white people who woke up and they were like, oh my God, what is happening? What is happening? Whether they were able to actually consciously acknowledge that or whether it was unconsciously visceral, I think that, I mean, and he wasn't just a black president. He was better educated than me. He was smarter than me. He was more well-spoken than me. And that didn't bother me, but I could see where, especially with the shifts in population coming with the demographics, I think that there were a lot of particularly conservative, particularly older white folks who were like, oh, my God, you know, we've got to take our country back. And I think with some
and I know I'm generalizing, and that never makes for good data, but I think that there's a lot of stuff wrapped up into MAGA support that who's going to say, Amanda, yeah, I voted for Donald Trump because I hate black people and I think it's time they went back to their place. Nobody's going to say that. How many people do you know that are so well versed on economic policy that, it's inflation, Amanda. I really think that I should vote for Donald Trump because I think he'll have a better grip on inflation. Give me a break.
Well, and what was their excuse the last two times, too? I agree. I think, the polling data, like when they kind of ask about this stuff sideways, you really start to see that's exactly right. Like, huge numbers of Republican voters back the Great Replacement conspiracy theory that holds that, like, Democrats are deliberately replacing white people with people of color, whatever the hell that means. Mm-hmm. And then, when you look at the subset of MAGA that's Christian nationalist, right, they have their own version of this, which is that Christianity is under attack and installing theocracy is the only way to stop. It's all victim narrative, right?
Yeah.
They have convinced they don't say I hate black people. They have a whole elaborate, and this is what I mean about how do you talk to people that are so disconnected from reality? This whole elaborate, like, black people are out to get me with their DEI and other stuff like that. And therefore the only way to defend myself is to take this aggressively racist, eliminationist often view. And this is always how fascism works. I mean, I don't love bringing up Hitler, but we don't have a choice here. Like, he didn't just run around yelling, I hate Jews. He ran around saying the Jews are behind all of our country's, problems, and they are out to get us, and we have to defend ourselves against them.
Yeah.
So it was a lie, and we're facing the same lies about immigrants. We're facing the same lies against trans people. That's what we're looking at right now.
Yeah. Amanda, we need to take a break for news. Amanda Marcotte, the senior writer at Salon.com. She and I will be right back after the news.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Jimmy Carter's coffin is being moved into the rotunda as we speak. The rotunda is filled with pretty much every political person that is in government right now. And shortly, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will be speaking to the crowd. I'm joined by Amanda Marcotte, senior writer at Salon.com. We have been talking about different aspects of MAGA. I believe, Amanda, and I want you to weigh in on this, I believe that a lot of this nonsense about, I want to annex Panama and I want to annex Greenland and, maybe if need be, we'll invade them, we'll use the military. I think that's Donald Trump doing his brilliant media manipulation, saying something so outrageous that everybody wants to report it because it's brilliant clickbait, whereas what he wants us to focus on, this nonsense, distracts us from Jack Smith. We don't have his report. Jimmy Carter, one of the greatest presidents in our history, being laid to rest, taking attention away from Donald Trump. I think he is a master of distracting the media with outrageous sleight of hand. Do you think I will have to eat those words if he actually calls up the generals and says, get ready, we're going to Greenland, get ready, we're taking it over. What do you think about all this?
I mean, he won't have to eat those words because even if he does that, it's only because people are getting wise to his tricks and aren't taking him seriously. So I see no evidence of that, so I don't think he'll probably act on this. He accomplished what he set out to do, which is got the Jack Smith story out of the headlines, got the Meta story out of the headlines. During that same press conference, he used a good chunk of it to encourage domestic terrorism. He spread lies about Ashley Babbitt's death. He winked more at pardoning violent January 6th insurrectionists. All of that, the goal of his actual comments was to let his followers know that if they do violent acts like that Las Vegas bomber, that he's got their backs, right? And that was not the headline. The headline was this crap about Greenland and Panama. And I think the other thing, and I think I want to write about this because I think it's a really critical part, it's not just the distraction. I think that he acts like a dumbass. Sorry, I didn't mean to curse on your show. Sorry.
That's okay. You're forgiven.
He acts like a dummy because it makes him seem harmless. There was a lot of, once the actual, kind of real meaty data came in about the election, it showed that a lot of the people who sat this one out have absorbed this idea that Donald Trump is not actually a scary or threatening figure. Like, the 19 million people who voted for Biden and then just didn't show for this election, a good, solid, chunky majority of them said that they just don't think that Donald Trump is dangerous. And that was 4 years of just relentless hammering of this idea that, liberals who say he's bad, liberals who say he's a fascist, there's all sorts of memes that MAGA uses to be like, he's just harmless, he's just a clown, right? They characterize people who call him a fascist and an authoritarian. They say things like they believe Orange Man bad, or they call that Trump derangement syndrome. And they do this very systematically. The whole point of this is to convince low information voters that they don't need to vote or pay attention or be engaged because both sides are just saying crazy crap to win. Politics is stupid, just tune out, drop out, don't care. And so when Trump's talking about Greenland and Panama, a huge part of this is to get liberals to react, and then his supporters can say, look, see, he's just kidding around. He's not actually a bad guy. And it's well, the same day that he's saying this stupid stuff, he's actively trying to suppress a report that shows that he stole state secrets, and God only knows what he did with them. We don't know. We haven't seen the report,
Do you think that him being a lame duck president and not eligible to run again, the way I've heard that it might likely play out is that Republicans will play along until the midterms, and then after the midterms, they really don't have to do anything he wants them to do because, by then he will, in their eyes, be a non-entity. What do you think of that theory?
I think it depends on how much his old age has addled him by then. They definitely hope he becomes a weak, lame duck so that they can kind of move on. So I think they want another Trump to sort of take his place, right? Especially the tech bros are eyeballing J.D. Vance, stuff like that. Right now, I think the question is, if Trump wants to run again, and he seems capable physically and mentally of doing it, and he's not so old that actually prevents him, right? Mm-hmm. I think that he will run again, and they will all get in line because there's nothing about past this predicate. He attempted a coup, and for a minute there, they were like, well, this is at the end of him. And then he just asserted that it wasn't, and they all got in line. So the notion that the law is going to stop him from running again is, I put more faith in biology than I do in the law in terms of stopping him.
Yeah, you've just voiced my deepest secret fear is that he will make some pronouncement about why he needs to stay in office. Let's hope we're not right about that.
What's going to happen is he'll get the nomination if he runs again, and then the idea that you're going to disqualify the one major party president from running is going to, everyone's going to get the ickies about it, and that'll allow the Supreme Court to find some excuse to, they did this with the 14th Amendment thing. He was already disqualified from running for president. And that, he's a felon.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually disqualified from being president, and everyone was like, well, what are you supposed to do? He won the Republican nomination, and that is more legitimizing than the Constitution, the law, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're already in this position where the law is like a paper tiger. And I have faith that biology, the one thing that MAGA just can't conquer with their reality denying skills is biology. And the COVID pandemic proved that.
Yeah, really. So you think he is going to be more and more doddering to the point where nobody takes him seriously at the end of this 4 years?
It's possible. That's my hope. I mean, age is
he didn't get too stressed out with his first term. Remember, he made fun of Barack Obama because a couple of times he played golf, and then Donald Trump ended up playing golf for the bulk of his presidency.
Yeah, and I mean, let's all hope that that's what they do with him. But I don't know. Every time I see him, he's visibly aged in a ways that are striking to me, and it reminds me very much of what I felt when I saw Joe Biden in 2020 in person, and I was like, oh, he's old now. And now, and we all saw what happened there. I mean, people age at different rates. Maybe he's hit he's hit kind of a plateau, and the dodderingness won't get worse. But but Trump is already pretty bad.
Yeah. Yes, he is. Amanda, thank you so much for being here. It is always a pleasure to talk with you. I really love your writing, and can't wait to read what you write in the next weeks and months at Salon.com. Amanda is a senior writer at Salon.com, and you can find her articles on the website. Amanda, again, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
We are going to take a break, and Rich Eberwein is going to talk about some stories from Heartland Signal when we come right back after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Heartland Signal's Rich Eberwein is here to bring us some of the reporting that he has been doing for HeartlandSignal.com, our digital cousin over on the website. Rich, what have you got for us today?
What's going on, Joan? Hope you had a good winter break. How you doing?
Yes, I stayed well for the first time in a long time.
That's good to hear.
My goals are very low. I have a very low bar of what constitutes success.
Well, glad to hear it. Welcome back.
Thanks.
All right. So today, just wanted to circle back to that Social Security Fairness Act that we were talking about last time. Finally, it got passed in the U.S. Senate, I'm sure you saw, and then sent to Joe Biden's desk, and he signed it into law over the weekend on Sunday. So we updated our Heartland Signal article on that.
And explain to the audience what that means, the Social Security Fairness Act.
Yeah, so basically it repeals a couple of provisions within the program, and long story short, public sector workers who have state and government pensions will have their payouts, their Social Security payouts, increased average of about $400 a month, so thousands of dollars more a year on their Social Security payouts. And so, this there was some disbelief that it would pass in the Senate with such little time left. It passed literally at the last possible second. It was the last thing voted on in the Senate before the continuing resolution to fund the government. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats kind of got it across the finish line and made a point to do it. There was Republican opposition, of course, less than I thought there would be. Senators Ted Cruz and Rand Paul forced votes on several amendments to the bill, and if any of those amendments had passed, the bill would have had to go back to the House of Representatives, and where, it would have had to go into the next year and possibly not have been voted on and could have died. And so, and they were making up all this stuff like, Rand Paul wanted to extend the age to receive payments to 70 years old, which was thoroughly rejected, and things like that. So it got across the finish line, got signed into law by President Biden, and it was sort of this the last hurrah of the Democrats' control of the Senate, and one of the last bills that Biden will pass or sign into law, and sort of like a swan song too for Senator Sherrod Brown, now former senator from Ohio. He co-sponsored the legislation, so kind of a nice little payoff for the Democrats, I think.
Yeah, when we talked before the holiday break, it didn't seem like this had much of a shot.
Yeah.
Well, how did they garner that support? Just really good whipping up of the votes?
That too, and there was a lot of bipartisan support. More so in the Senate, there was I think they got at least 20 Republicans to vote with them. So it had surprising amount of bipartisan support, and Senator Schumer had a lot to do with it. He made it a point that they were going to vote on it before the end of the session. So I think a lot of the credit goes to him. Sherrod Brown, he's been kind of like a, champion of progressive type policies during his 3 terms in the Senate. So this is just another one of the examples of his, record. And, he's co-sponsored things like railway safety acts and Medicare expansion in the past. And so it's kind of, this is like his last hurrah. And now, there's some decent eyes on him. He's been doing a lot of interviews lately. And he said that he's not done in politics yet. He's made it a point to say that his post-Senate mission is to make the Democratic Party for the workers again. This is leading to speculation that, he may run again for the Senate in 2026 or maybe another governor run. And so that's kind of leads into my next story. We wrote up a piece yesterday about Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. He possibly could be choosing his lieutenant governor, John Husted, to fill J.D. Vance's Senate seat. J.D. Vance, of course, is going to become the vice president in a couple of weeks, so that leaves a vacancy in the U.S. Senate. And so, John Husted has been rumored, and there was a report saying that if he wants the job, that DeWine will appoint him to it. Kind of setting up a possible, showdown between Sherrod Brown and John Husted. Interestingly, the report also said that if Husted doesn't accept the Senate bid, that he might run for governor, and Sherrod Brown is also rumored to possibly run for governor. So either way, I think these two guys are kind of going to be involved in the 2026 Ohio elections, which could be consequential for the for the efforts to reverse Republican gerrymandering, which we discussed a couple weeks ago. So, yeah.
Do you have any reason? Has he given any reasons why he might not want to go to the Senate? I've frankly heard that's a pretty cushy gig.
Yeah, so I think there was an anonymous source that told the Columbus Dispatch that he's never been like a Washington, D.C. kind of guy. He would be more interested in staying in Ohio and running for governor because Mike DeWine is going to be term limited in 2026, so that could be more of an appealing gig for him instead of going to the Senate. In that case, somebody like Matt Dolan or Frank LaRose, who's the current Secretary of State, could get the nomination. Frank LaRose has also been heavily involved in the Republican gerrymandering in Ohio, so And he also ran against Bernie Moreno in the primary. So familiar faces could be involved. But, that's sort of John Husted's possibly, reasoning behind staying in Ohio instead of going to the Senate.
Interesting. And I know you've been doing some reporting on things in Minnesota. What's going on there?
Yeah, there's kind of like a developing situation in Minnesota in the House of Representatives right now. There's a special election that we reported on last week that was scheduled by Governor Tim Walz. Basically, one of the Democrats there is not allowed to retain his seat or take his seat in the Minnesota House of Representatives because a judge found that he did not meet the residency requirements. So that leaves one vacancy in the Minnesota House of Representatives to begin, and a one-seat voting majority for the Republicans. So they have 67 seats. Democrats basically have 66. And this is leading the Republicans to sort of make a power grab when they don't have the right to. I think the Minnesota Constitution says you need 68 seats for a governing majority in the body. So they are trying to, during this 2-week period of where, the Minnesota session will go into session on Tuesday, and when the special election happens 2 weeks later, they are going to try to elect their own Speaker of the House and basically set committee assignments when they don't have the right to, according to the Democrats.
A Republican power grab. How unusual. Yeah. Do you suppose they were watching their colleagues in North Carolina attempt to continue to have the reins of power despite the fact that they've all been voted out?
Yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised. That's sort of a developing situation. The House session is set to start a week from today. So. And the Democrats are threatening to boycott the start of the session if the Republicans don't agree to a power sharing agreement, since this one seat is kind of holding the balance of which, either there will be a Republican majority if a Republican wins that special election, or there will be a tie in the body. So it's kind of undecided yet whether there will be a tie or a Republican majority, and the Republicans are kind of foregoing that conclusion and trying to just grab power in the meantime.
It's interesting, and I wonder, I didn't speak about this with you ahead of time, but Ken Martin from Minnesota is considered by many perhaps the top choice to be head of the DNC. Of course, Wisconsin's Ben Wickler has thrown his hat in the ring, as have a couple of other people. But one of the things that was in Ken Martin's favor, even though he's not exactly a household name, at least not in this household, was that, he's done such incredible things, getting Democrats to win in Minnesota and really, really helping change that state over. This kind of Republican power grab would seem to undermine Ken Martin's case that, he made that state at the very least purpley blue, if not full on blue.
Yeah. Ken Martin did issue a statement basically just condemning the Republicans for going ahead before this special election has been completed. And the Republicans are also filing a lawsuit against Tim Walz for setting the special election and trying to delay that even further. They're kind of doing everything they can. And then we also have a little clip, too, from the GOP press conference yesterday where they were asked about forcing attendance on Democrats if they don't come into this session. And so we have a clip of that.
We definitely know that constituents expect their people to be here at work, and we do not stand for anyone that chooses not to show up.
You mean recall elections? You would try recall?
Whatever opportunity is out there, if they choose to do this, we will explore it and we will act.
And what about forcing attendance? Could you get law enforcement involved? Are you exploring law enforcement bringing members back, compelling attendance? Other states have gone through that.
We are absolutely expecting that Democrats will show up on the first day of session and be ready to get to work.
Isn't it amazing, Rich? Democrats do anything, and Republicans scream bloody murder about how it's illegal and not precedent and violating norms. And yet, when it serves their interests, somehow we don't hear those same complaints.
Yeah, and not ruling out forcing Democrats to attend through law enforcement or recall elections. So, obviously, just they could just let the special election happen and agree to a very temporary power sharing agreement or could be temporary, So just to avoid the beginning of the legislative session from being, a quasi-constitutional crisis, I guess. So, there's a lot of, this is a developing situation, obviously, and that by next week, when the session opens up, I should have another update for you.
Great. That's Rich Eberwein, guys, from Heartland Signal. You can find his reporting and other reporting at heartlandsignal.com. You may have heard Amanda Marcotte mention what went on at Meta today. They've made some changes about how they will and will not fact check going forward. In an emergency media session, Jennifer Schulze and Mark Jacob and I are going to talk about that in a couple of minutes.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Mark Zuckerberg announced that the fact-checking policies at Meta were just too complex. They were going too far. They were censoring things that shouldn't be censored, particularly conversations about immigration and gender. So he wants to do away with the fact-checking around those particular topics. He claims that when it comes to drugs or child sex or terrorism, that there will still be guardrails put in place. But he says this is all about free speech, and he felt that the guardrails that were there were unfairly dampening free speech, particularly, like I said, in the areas of immigration and gender. A lot of people, though, are really worried about this and see this as another step of capitulation that Bezos and Musk and Zuckerberg and all the tech billionaires and corporate billionaires trying to please Donald Trump, and what that will mean for free speech, what that will mean for an increase in hate speech. Well, let's go to our two experts. Jennifer Schulze, a longtime newswoman, writer of opinion pieces that you see on Heartland Signal, and Mark Jacob, who is the writer of the Stop the Presses newsletter, which you can find at stopthepresses.news, are here to talk about these changes that are getting some pretty strong reactions. Welcome, Mark. Welcome, Jennifer. This is an emergency media session. I will do a full-blown media session later in the week, but this is an emergency to talk about what is this? Is this a boost for free speech, or is this opening the doors to hate speech? Mark, you want to start?
Yeah, I do feel like this is just kind of open season for lies. I mean, it's a green light to let lies through, and people need to understand that the law makes these social media platforms, not publishers, so they're not subject to the same laws as far as libel and this and that. So when they put something on there that is fatly untrue and defaming to somebody, they can't be sued. And so that makes them really dangerous because there's no accountability. And so if they want to just put up, flat out lies, they can if they don't care about, democracy. Clearly, Jeff Zuckerberg cares way more about his big bank account and keeping it as big as possible because he's done several things in recent days that show he's just trying to suck up to Trump every way he can.
I thought that was Jeff Bezos' job. But anyway, Jennifer, what do you think about this?
Did I say Jeff? I think I said Jeff Zuckerberg. I meant Mark Zuckerberg.
But they're both suck-ups at this point. And the fact that the Washington Post headline on this says Meta ends fact-checking, drawing praise from Trump. Anything that draws praise from Trump makes me very nervous. Jennifer, what do you think?
Well, I think a lot of things.
What do you think about this?
I think that Facebook is a cesspool already, and I can't imagine any reason anybody would want to be on there going forward. Know that there's already such an incredible amount of nasty stuff, and now it's gonna be like Twitter, in that Twitter's become a haven for Nazis and hate speech, and Facebook will be too. And so I would say to people, listen, if you've been sharing pictures of your grandkids, find another way to do it, because you do not want to be a part of this. You don't want to be adding anything to, as Mark said, Zuckerberg's pocketbook. I just think there's no reason to support this in any way. I mean, I feel like Facebook is one of the reasons that the mainstream media has died, because media, as we talked about on this show many times, gave away its content for free when Facebook first came around and created this expectation that content was free and, just gave away their product to Facebook. Well, now Zuckerberg is very clearly saying, yeah, we don't care about that. We just want, free speech. And I really do not appreciate this. I think it's MAGA marketing when the right wing talks about free speech. They do not mean, everybody can say whatever, it's great, and First Amendment, blah, 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 blah. No. Let's remind everybody what Trump's version of free speech means. It means silencing his critics. It means pulling their license. It means he can threaten jail.
He's trying to cover up the Jack Smith report right now.
Promoting propaganda.
Yeah.
Denying reality.
He's not interested in more information. He's interested in less information. He's interested in disinformation, and that's what this idea that and Zuckerberg said this today about how the incoming administration believes in free expression. No, it doesn't. It believes in trying its own. It believes in its lies getting to the consumers unimpeded. That's what it believes in.
Right. And I think that, like many things, and Mark, you know this better than most, like you wrote about with the expression deep state, I'd argue it's the same when you talk about Doge. When we all repeat these talking points, we give life to things that aren't real, or they don't mean what you think they mean. They do not mean free speech and free expression. They mean open up the sewer and let the Nazis come in. I mean, Facebook has already today started rewriting some of its policies, and one of the things that will now be allowed on Facebook, and again, their moderators have not been great, but they have had folks looking at content. They will not have that anymore. And one of the things that will be permitted now on Facebook will be criticism of gay people, women. Facebook is going to allow content where people can say that women don't belong in the military because they're women. They should stay home. I mean, it just, a lot of things this isn't about free speech. It's not about free expression. It's about we have something to say, and we don't want anybody to get in our way.
Mm-hmm. Even the Washington Post article admits that this will allow for greater critiques of LGBTQ plus people and other marginalized groups. Yeah. New rules allow posts calling for gender-based restrictions in bathroom sports and specific schools for characterizing homosexuality as a mental illness. In what universe is this making Facebook better? Is this just Mark Zuckerberg not really care at all about the content and just wanting to appease Trump? And why are the billionaire class so interested in appeasing Trump? You'd think if anybody could stand up to him, it would be them.
Yeah, well, that's
no, they
the thing
just
about
want
it
more
is,
stuff.
Right. Their greed is insatiable, and Trump was asked at his press conference, today. He said, "Well, your criticism of Mark Zuckerberg, do you think that affected his decision? That you'd have threatened him?" And he said, "Yeah, I think it has." So Trump knows that if he calls out these people and he threatens to punish them with the power of the federal government, that they're going to fold. And it really, the sad thing is that we found that the richest people in our society are the most cowardly, and that's really disappointing, because someone like Zuckerberg or Bezos could just take all their money, buy an island somewhere, and go be happy and be surrounded by toys and the people who love them, and have a happy life. But they don't want that. They're just greedy bastards who want to have as much as they can possibly grab. And I mean, the greed. Trump is really benefiting from the greed of the really richest people in our society, and the fact that they're never going to be satisfied. They want more and more and more. Elon Musk, I think he wants to rule the damn world. I mean, explain to me where he has any limits on his own behavior.
None.
Well, he
Zero.
doesn't. I mean, he's trying to screw around in Europe now.
Right.
Yeah, now he's focusing on the UK.
I agree with Mark. I think it's about greed. I also think it's about power. And, I mean, how quickly they all have coalesced around Trump and changed longstanding behaviors. I mean, Tim Cook has never donated to an inauguration before, and he's talking about how he's writing in $1 million check to Donald Trump because of national unity. Well, he didn't do that 4 years ago.
No, he didn't.
And so there's something about access to power. I think it's also they really don't want to be on the wrong side of this guy. And every time one more of them writes a check or one more of them changes their business to suit and his followers, it's like the dam is broken in many respects. And it is, I think, going to be really challenging for all the rest of us to figure out what do we do about this? I mean, Twitter's already, and I'm going to keep calling it Twitter, by the way, and I'm going to keep calling it Facebook, because Meta and X, forget that. But, Twitter helped Donald Trump win the election. I mean, it's a powerful tool. It was used very successfully. And now Facebook, I mean, just imagine this. RFK Jr. is probably going to be the next HHS secretary. All the other department heads that have been nominated are equally quacky and dangerous. That kind of information is what flourishes on Facebook already. Imagine it with no fact-checking.
Yeah.
If raw milk is going to be the least of our worries when these floodgates open, as they are opening as we speak. It's crazy. So I think, I'm going to have a chat with my 91-year-old mother who still likes to go look at pictures on Facebook and say, no, you know what? You can't be on there anymore. Because
yeah, it's a shame. It really is.
We shouldn't be supporting that.
Guys, we need to take a real quick break. Jennifer Schulze, Mark Jacob, and I are having an emergency media session because Meta has basically decided, hate speech, it's really okay. We'll be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Longtime news people Mark Jacob and Jennifer Schulze are here with me right now talking about the decision by Mark Zuckerberg to basically suspend a lot of the fact-checking that goes into Meta owns Facebook, Instagram, Threads. They are all Meta products. And what's scary is that unlike with Twitter, which Elon Musk is still driving into the ground because it has lost so many advertisers, there are marketing experts quoted in this Washington Post article that say that they don't think that Facebook will suffer that same kind of advertising loss because, what was it, this woman who works for a research market firm says, unlike X, Meta is an essential platform for advertisers, and it's going to be a lot harder for them to pull the plug, even as concerns over brand safety proliferate. Jonathan Greenblatt of the Anti-Defamation League has blasted Meta for doing this. Don, even of the nonprofit News Literacy Project, has blasted Zuckerberg and Meta for doing this. But not only is Mark Zuckerberg doing this, he's also pushing back against the idea that social media has anything to do with the ills of our society. That was a wrong idea. I should never have agreed to that back in the days when I apologized for that. Do you think that, the pushback against X has been significant? Malcolm Nance is a big contributor on Stephanie Miller's show, and he has called publicly that anybody who is left on Twitter, anybody who still has an account on Twitter, that they should all, he wants January 20th to be the day that everybody leaves Twitter. And I think that's more doable than Facebook, because like you said, Jen, your mom uses it to stay in touch with family. It's not just about posting political content. It's about connecting with family and other folks that you're. I'm in several television groups on Facebook. I think what Mark Zuckerberg is doing is wrong. I agree with the marketer, though. I don't think he'll necessarily get the same kind of economic loss that Twitter's getting. So going back to what Jennifer said right before we took the break, what do we do about this? Jennifer, do you have any ideas?
Well, I'm not on Facebook, and I haven't been for years, so I'm just going to continue to stay as far away from it as I can. I am on Instagram and Threads, and I'm going to stop using Threads, I think, and I'm thinking about Instagram because that's going to change that platform quite a bit. Like I said before, Facebook already has a lot of junk on it, and it's just there's just a lot of bad information on there. Instagram has had less of that, but it'll be interesting to see how that changes with these new policies. So I'm reserving judgment on that. I just feel like, especially if you're a journalism organization, I feel like you have to stay away from that. Like I said before, I think Facebook got journalism into trouble in the first place by relying on it. There have to be other ways to communicate and for people to stay in touch. I don't know. I think it's a very distressing day.
Mark, any ideas?
What really needs to happen is alternatives need to show up. And Blue Sky, I think right now is a good alternative to Twitter. For various discussions, it's not really a great alternative to Facebook, but we need one. Some people need to, create new products that are not, tainted by this kind of, pro-Trump kind of taint. So I don't know. I think also people should get into, this may be a controversial suggestion, but people can get into little text groups with each other and share pictures that way. They might drive people crazy. I don't know. But, and I think they do that to some extent these days. And there are ways to communicate with each other without Facebook. It's not like a vital fluid for our bodies to survive. I mean, we can
right. Yes, I agree. I mean, I haven't, like I said, I haven't used it for years, and I don't even think about it. Whatever. Move on, everybody. Get off of that.
I just think do you want to be next to? Do you really want to be next to some post about how vaccines cause autism, even though we flat out know they don't? Do you really want that? Especially the next time there's a dangerous disease spreading. The first human being died of bird flu this week in the United States, and so people are worried about that. And what's going to happen when Facebook spreads all this crap that's not true about that?
Do you think if it gets bad, I mean, we've already got civic organizations saying this is horrible. If the hate gets as bad as it's gotten on Twitter, do you think Zuckerberg will ever say, you know what? We're not going back to the way it was, but we are going to put a few more guardrails in place in some way that sort of he can save face and yet backtrack?
No.
He doesn't seem quite as insane to me as Elon Musk. I guess that's what...
Oh, no. I don't think... Oh, you think he is? I don't think he is either. I agree with Joan. I feel like he's trying to get in the safe space for his company. And instead of doing the courageous thing, I mean, that would be what a really stand-up person would do, is just to say, no, I'm not going to do this just because of Trump. But I think what he wants to do right now is just stay out of Trump's crosshairs. And Trump starting his second run in the White House, obviously if Facebook wanted to defy him, it would become a target. I think he just doesn't want to be a target. And yes, so the answer is yes, I think he might be, readjust things again in a year or two. But he might not. And right now he is helping Republican disinformation spread. And that's why Trump got reelected, is because his lies were very effective and they were spread effectively. And we're going to see more of it. We're going to see more crazy behavior from Trump. We're going to see it depicted in ridiculous ways. And, it's a great idea that we're going to invade Panama or Greenland. I mean, it's insanity, and we're going to see it treated as if it's normal stuff. And it's very dangerous, and people are influenced by that. They just are.
Advertisers ended up leaving Twitter because it was toxic to be associated with the hate speech. If hate speech proliferates on Facebook and misinformation, don't you think that same thing is possible, regardless of what the media person says? Jennifer?
You know what? I'm just not so sure about that, given how some companies have behaved since the election. Trump and Musk made attacking advertisers like a big part of their daily rants, and they still talk about it. I think they're going to keep talking about it, and I think we've seen a remarkable lack of courage on the part of people who run companies and some of the companies themselves. And so I'm not so sure that people will be staying off of Twitter, or keeping their advertising off of Twitter. And I don't think we should expect that many of them would be leaving Facebook. I think this is going to get worse before it ever gets better, I guess is my point.
That's going to be my mantra for the next two years. It's going to get worse before it gets better for the next 660-some days.
Yeah, listen, I keep coming back to this. If you condemn Donald Trump, as everyone should have, over January 6th, and 4 years later you are going down to visit him, writing him checks, changing your company policies to benefit him, really, how much lower can you go than that? I think, Mark Zuckerberg, people are sharing what Mark Zuckerberg wrote on Facebook after January 6th 4 years ago. Just think, that is not that long. less than 4 years for this guy to completely change.
We're going to have to pick this discussion up again on Thursday. We will be back talking about media Thursday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. because we are out of time, despite the fact that we had a media emergency and everyone rose to the challenge. Mark Jacob, Jennifer Schulze, thank you for being here. That is going to do it for me today. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez is next. I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. We're going to talk to some really interesting folks. A professor of political science from Hemline University, who we've talked to before and you've really enjoyed, is going to be coming back. That's going to do it for me. Have a great evening. Stay safe, my friends, and good night.